Settle into the sleepy mind channel. Tonight, we will explore how humans learn to measure time. Before clocks rested on walls, before watches ticked quietly on wrists, and long before glowing numbers appeared on screens beside the bed, people still experienced the time every single day. The sun rose over distant hills. Shadows stretched across the ground. Darkness arrived slowly each evening, before giving way once more to morning light. Life moved through repeating patterns, long before anyone understood how to divide a day into hours or minutes. For most of human history, people did not know the exact time, because exact time did not yet exist. If you enjoy calm stories like these, feel free to like and subscribe, and check out the playlist for all-night listening, with many more relaxing stories designed to help you fall asleep while learning. Imagine standing beside a small fire many thousands of years ago without clocks, calendars, or written schedules. There are no bells ringing from towers, and no devices counting seconds silently in your pocket. The only way to understand the time is to observe change happening around you. The sky slowly brightens each morning. The warmth of sunlight reaches the ground. Birds begin moving through the trees, while distant animal sounds fade with the arrival of daylight. By evening, the air cools again as darkness returns across the landscape. For early humans, these repeating natural events became the first experience of timekeeping. Time was not yet measured with machines or numbers. Instead, it was understood through movement and change. Hunger arrived after many hours without food. Fatigue appeared after long periods of activity. The position of the sun revealed whether much daylight remained before darkness. The world itself acted as the first clock. This early relationship with time was deeply connected to survival. People needed to know when to hunt, when to travel, when to seek shelter, and when dangerous darkness approached. Long before formal systems existed, observation became essential. Small patterns inside nature slowly revealed that the world moved in repeating cycles. Morning always followed night. Seasons shifted gradually from warmth to cold before returning again. Certain stars appeared during specific times of the year. Rivers changed with rainfall, while animal migrations followed recognizable seasonal rhythms. At first, these patterns may have felt mysterious rather than scientific. Early humans likely noticed cycles long before fully understanding them. Imagine watching shadows move slowly across the ground throughout the day without knowing why they change position. The movement appears gradual but reliable. A rock that casts a long shadow during early morning creates a much shorter shadow later beneath the midday sun. By evening, the shadow stretches outward once again across the earth. This ability to notice repeating patterns became one of the most important developments in human history. Observation allowed early people to predict what would happen next. If darkness always followed sunset, shelter could be prepared ahead of time. If colder weather returned after many cycles of warm days, food and supplies could be gathered before conditions became difficult. Survival improved when patterns could be recognized and remembered. Nature provided countless signals that helped shape this growing awareness of time. The changing position of the moon revealed longer cycles beyond a single day. Tides rose and fell along coastlines consistently. Flowers opened beneath sunlight before closing again during darkness. Even the human body followed repeating rhythms connected to sleep, hunger, and energy. Everywhere people looked, the world appeared filled with movement occurring in predictable ways. This understanding did not emerge all at once. It likely developed slowly across countless generations through observation and memory. Parents taught children which stars appeared during certain seasons and which environmental signs warned of approaching weather changes. People gradually became experts at recognizing small shifts within the world because paying attention increased the chances of survival. Early humans measured time more closely through experience than through numbers. A journey may have lasted from sunrise until sunset, rather than for a measured quantity of hours. A season arrived when temperatures changed and plants began growing again. Events were connected to environmental conditions instead of exact units. Time remained fluid and closely tied to the visible world. The movement of the sun became especially important because it created one of the clearest repeating patterns visible to every human community across Earth. Each morning, sunlight returned from the horizon. Each evening, darkness followed once more. These predictable changes offered one of humanity's earliest reliable reference points. Long before clocks existed, the sky itself provided structure to life. There is something strangely calming about imagining this earlier world, where time moved more gently and less precisely. People still worked, traveled, rested, and survived, yet their understanding of time remained connected directly to the environment around them. Instead of staring at ticking numbers, they watched clouds drift across the sky and shadows shift slowly beside stones and trees. The time could be seen unfolding naturally across the landscape itself. Eventually, humans began realizing that these natural changes could be studied more carefully. If shadows moved consistently, perhaps their movement could become useful. If days repeated predictable cycles, perhaps those cycles could be measured more accurately. Observation slowly transformed into experimentation. The environment no longer acted only as a backdrop for survival. It became a system that could be studied and understood. This shift marked the true beginning of timekeeping. People started looking at motion not merely as part of life, but as something that could be tracked intentionally. A moving shadow, flowing water, swinging pendulum, or vibrating crystal could all become tools for measurement if their motion remained steady enough. The idea sounds simple now, yet it represented a great intellectual step forward. Time itself could not be touched or held directly, so people learned to measure it indirectly through change happening around them. Long before people built clocks from metal gears or electronic systems, the sky itself became one of the greatest teachers of time. Every day, early people looked upward and watched the same enormous patterns repeat across the world around them. Morning light arrived slowly from the horizon. The sun climbed steadily higher across the sky before descending once again toward darkness. Stars appeared during the night in familiar formations, while the moon changed shape through repeating cycles that unfolded gradually over many evenings. By carefully observing these movements, people began forming one of the earliest understandings of time itself. For early communities, watching the sky was not a hobby or an abstract scientific exercise. It was part of daily survival. The changing position of the sun revealed how much daylight remained for travel, hunting, gathering food, or preparing shelter before darkness arrived. Clouds hinted at approaching storms, while seasonal shifts in sunlight signaled changing temperatures and animal migration patterns. Observation became deeply connected to life because the environment constantly provided information to anyone patient enough to notice it. One of the most important discoveries early humans made was that the world followed patterns. The sun did not move randomly across the sky. It followed the same general path each day. Shadows shifted gradually in predictable directions. Certain stars returned during specific times of the year. Even though ancient people did not yet possess scientific language for explaining these movements, they could still recognize consistency. Nature repeated itself over and over again with remarkable reliability. Imagine sitting beside a quiet river many thousands of years ago during the early morning hours. The sunlight slowly begins touching distant hills, while long shadows stretch across the ground beside trees and stones. As the day continues, those shadows gradually shorten before changing direction later in the afternoon. If you return to the same location day after day, the pattern repeats with great precision. The details may vary slightly with seasons and weather, but the larger movement remains dependable. This ability to recognize dependable change became one of humanity's earliest forms of measurement. People slowly realized that movement could act as a reference point. If shadows changed in regular ways, perhaps those changes could help organize life more effectively. Observation transformed into understanding little by little through repeated experience. The sky offered especially powerful reference points because it could be seen almost everywhere on Earth. Unlike rivers, mountains, forests, or coastlines, the movement of sunlight and darkness surrounded every human community, regardless of location. People living in deserts, grasslands, forests, or coastal regions all experience the steady arrival of day and night. This made solar movement one of the first truly universal patterns shared across human civilization. At first, these observations were likely simple and practical. Early people probably noticed broad changes rather than exact measurements. The sun standing high overhead suggested midday, while long evening shadows warned that darkness was approaching soon. Yet over long stretches of time, people became increasingly skilled at noticing smaller details. They began observing how shadows moved differently during various seasons and how the position of sunrise shifted gradually across the horizon throughout the year. This growing awareness helped people understand that time operated through repeating natural cycles. A single day represented one cycle, while the changing moon represented another. Longer seasonal shifts revealed even larger repeating patterns connected to weather, temperature, and plant growth. People slowly began organizing memory around these cycles because they provided reliable structure within an unpredictable world. Nature itself became the earliest calendar and clock combined together. There were no numbered schedules or exact hours, yet life still unfolded according to recognizable timing systems. Certain activities belonged naturally to morning, while others occurred more safely during daylight or evening. Communities adapted their routines around the steady movement of sunlight because ignoring those patterns could create danger. The movement of shadows became especially fascinating because shadows behaved almost like visible evidence of time passing. A shadow never remains perfectly still throughout the day. It slowly changes length and direction as sunlight shifts position overhead. Early humans likely noticed these changes repeatedly while resting beside rocks, trees, or shelters. A tall object standing beneath the sun could quietly demonstrate the movement of time across the landscape itself. Observation also taught an important intellectual lesson. People realized that understanding the world required patience and repetition. Patterns could only be recognized by watching the same events happen again and again over long periods. This gradual accumulation of knowledge helped shape early scientific thinking long before formal science existed. Observation allowed people to predict future events based upon repeated natural behavior. The sky therefore became more than scenery. It became information. Every sunrise, sunset, shadow, and seasonal change offered clues about the structure of the world. People began learning that nature moved according to consistent principles that could be studied and remembered. This realization eventually led toward more advanced forms of timekeeping, because people wanted ways to track these patterns more accurately. As observation improved, people started connecting movement with measurement. If a shadow moved steadily across the ground each day, perhaps that movement could mark portions of the day itself. If sunlight always changed position gradually across the sky, perhaps objects could be arranged to help track those changes intentionally. The idea was still simple, yet it represented a major shift in human thinking. Nature no longer acted only as something to survive within. It became something that could be measured and understood systematically. The connection between movement and measurement would eventually shape every major timekeeping system humans created. Sundials depended upon moving shadows, while water clocks relied upon flowing liquid. Mechanical clocks used controlled motion from gears and pendulums, while modern systems measure precise vibrations and oscillations. Across thousands of years of technological change, the same fundamental principle continued repeating. Consistent movement could be used to measure time. Long before clocks ticked inside homes or watches rested against human skin, people learned to watch the sky carefully enough to recognize that the world itself already moved with reliable rhythm. The rising sun, shifting shadows, and repeating cycles of nature became the earliest guides that slowly taught humanity how the time could be observed, understood, and eventually measured. As people became more skilled at observing the sky, they slowly began noticing something remarkable about shadows. Shadows did not move randomly across the ground. They followed clear and dependable patterns connected directly to the position of the sun overhead. A tree standing in an open field cast a long shadow during early morning, before that shadow gradually shortened near midday. Later in the afternoon, the shadow stretched outward once more in the opposite direction. Day after day, this movement repeated with great consistency. At first, these changes may have seemed like little more than ordinary parts of the environment. Yet over many generations, people began understanding that shadows could reveal more than the simple presence of sunlight. Shadows could also show the time itself. The movement of darkness across the ground became one of humanity's first natural measuring systems, because it transformed invisible passing hours into something visible and easy to observe. Imagine standing beside a tall stone placed upright beneath the open sky. During sunrise, the shadow extends far across the earth in one direction. As the day continues, the shadow slowly shifts position, while becoming shorter and darker beneath the strengthening sunlight. By afternoon, the shadow stretches outward once again, but now toward a different part of the landscape. If someone marked the ground carefully, where the shadow reached at various moments during the day. Those markings would create a simple pattern that repeated again tomorrow. This realization eventually led to one of the earliest known timekeeping devices in human history. The sundial emerged from the understanding that sunlight and shadow could work together to create measurement. Instead of simply observing shadows casually, people began designing systems specifically intended to track their movement more deliberately. The earliest sundials were likely extremely simple. A stick, pillar, or upright stone placed beneath direct sunlight could act as a basic shadow marker. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadow changed direction steadily throughout the day. People slowly learned that these changes could help organize daily activities more reliably. Work, travel, trade, religious ceremonies, and social gatherings all benefited from more predictable ways of understanding the passing day. What makes the sundial so fascinating is its simplicity. There are no gears, springs, or moving mechanical parts. The device works entirely because Earth rotates beneath the sun. Ancient people did not fully understand planetary motion in scientific terms yet, but they could still observe the visible effects clearly. The sky appeared to move consistently overhead, while shadows responded with dependable precision on the ground below. The sundial transformed observation into structure. Instead of relying only on general impressions like early morning or late afternoon, people could begin dividing daylight into more recognizable segments. Markings placed around a shadow-casting object helped indicate different portions of the day as sunlight shifted steadily across the landscape. Different civilizations eventually developed many forms of sundials depending upon geography, culture, and available materials. Some sundials used simple upright poles, while others became beautifully carved stone structures with carefully measured markings. Ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, and many other civilizations all developed variations of shadow-based timekeeping systems over long periods of history. Despite their differences, all sundials depended upon the same core principle. A fixed object blocks sunlight and creates a moving shadow. The movement of that shadow reflects the changing position of the sun across the sky. Because the movement remains consistent, it can act as a reliable reference for measuring portions of the day. There is something deeply peaceful about the way sundials measure time. Unlike modern clocks that divide each day into countless tiny units, a sundial moves slowly and silently. Shadows shift almost imperceptibly from one moment to the next. The time becomes connected directly to sunlight, weather, and the movement of the world. Clouds crossing the sky can soften the shadow, while evening light stretches it gently across the ground before darkness finally arrives. The sundial also reminds us how closely early timekeeping depended upon observation and patience. There was no sudden invention where humanity instantly learned to measure hours precisely. Instead, understanding developed gradually through careful attention toward repeating natural patterns. A person sitting quietly beneath sunlight long enough would eventually notice that shadows followed dependable rhythms day after day. Accuracy depended heavily upon placement and design. Sundials needed proper positioning beneath open sunlight to function correctly. A poorly placed sundial could produce misleading results because shadow movement changes depending upon location and orientation. Ancient builders therefore learned that geometry and careful alignment mattered greatly for successful timekeeping. Sundials also carried limitations that eventually encouraged new inventions. They only worked during daylight hours and depended entirely upon clear access to sunlight. Heavy clouds or nighttime darkness made shadow-based measurement impossible. Yet despite these limitations, sundials remained incredibly important for thousands of years because they provided one of the first stable systems for dividing and organizing daily time. In many ancient cities, large public sundials helped entire communities coordinate activities more effectively. Markets, public meetings, religious observances, and work schedules all benefited from shared awareness of daylight progression. Time slowly became something more collective and organized, rather than entirely personal and environmental. The relationship between light and shadow also created an elegant form of natural engineering. People did not force movement into existence artificially. Instead, they learned how to use motion already occurring within nature itself. The earth turned steadily beneath the sky, while sunlight produced moving shadows automatically each day. Sundials simply translated this natural movement into understandable measurement. Even today, ancient sundials continue functioning exactly as they did thousands of years ago. A carefully placed sundial still measures daylight through nothing more than sunlight, shadow, and Earth's steady rotation. Modern clocks may be vastly more precise, yet the basic idea behind the sundial remains surprisingly sophisticated. Consistent motion can become measurable time when observed carefully enough. The invention of the sundial marked one of humanity's first major attempts to transform the natural rhythms of the environment into organized systems for tracking life. A moving shadow became more than an ordinary visual effect beneath sunlight. It became information. Through observation and simple design, people discovered that the steady movement of light across the world could quietly reveal the passing hours of each day. The success of the sundial depended upon something so large and constant that ancient people could observe it every day without fully understanding its true scale. Earth itself was always moving. People standing quietly beside a sundial often believed the sun traveled across the sky above them, yet in reality, the planet beneath their feet was slowly rotating through space. This motion created the steady movement of sunlight and shadow that made early timekeeping possible. Ancient civilizations did not begin with modern astronomy or scientific instruments capable of explaining planetary motion precisely. Yet observation still revealed that sunlight behaved with great consistency. Shadows changed direction gradually throughout the day in ways that could be predicted repeatedly. The reliability of this movement allowed sundials to function because the system depended entirely upon steady natural motion rather than random change. A sundial works because a fixed object remains stationary while sunlight appears to move around it during the day. This object, often called a gnomon in later scientific language, blocks part of the sunlight and creates a shadow on the surface below. As the sun changes position in the sky, the shadow shifts slowly across marked sections of the sundial. Each position corresponds to a different portion of daylight. Imagine placing a tall stick upright in an open field beneath clear morning sunlight. At sunrise, the shadow stretches far across the ground because the sun remains low near the horizon. As morning continues, the shadow gradually shortens while moving steadily around the base of the stick. Near midday, the shadow becomes much smaller because the sun appears higher overhead. By late afternoon, the shadow grows long once again, while pointing in a different direction across the landscape. This movement appears smooth and continuous because Earth rotates at a remarkably steady rate. Every day follows nearly the same overall pattern. The reliability of planetary motion allowed early humans to trust the changing positions of shadows as useful references for tracking daylight. Nature itself supplied the motion, while the sundial simply translated that motion into visible measurement. One reason sundials fascinated ancient people was because they transformed something normally invisible into something that could be seen directly. Time itself cannot be touched or observed physically. People experience its passing indirectly through change. A moving shadow provided visible evidence that the day was progressing forward, even when the movement happened gradually enough to seem almost still from one moment to the next. This connection between movement and measurement became one of the foundations of all later timekeeping systems. Sundials demonstrated that consistent motion could be divided into understandable intervals. Once people recognized this principle clearly, they began searching for other forms of steady movement that might also measure time reliably. The position of the sundial mattered greatly for accuracy. A poorly placed sundial could create incorrect shadow patterns because sunlight reaches different parts of Earth at different angles depending upon location. Ancient builders slowly learned that careful alignment improved reliability. Some sundials were positioned specifically according to local geography and the path of the sun overhead during different seasons. The changing seasons introduced additional complexity as well. The sun does not appear in exactly the same position throughout the entire year. During summer months, sunlight reaches higher across the sky, while winter sunlight remains lower. These seasonal differences affect shadow length and movement. Ancient observers likely noticed these gradual changes long before fully understanding their astronomical causes. Even with these complications, the sundial remained remarkably effective for its time. People did not yet require the extreme precision expected in modern life. There were no trains needing synchronized departure schedules and no electronic networks operating through tiny fractions of seconds. Ancient communities mainly needed dependable ways to organize daylight activities, and sundials provided that structure surprisingly well. There is also something elegant about how little energy the system requires. Modern clocks depend upon batteries, electricity, springs, or mechanical tension. A sundial uses only sunlight and shadow. As long as the Earth continues rotating and the sun rises overhead, the device functions automatically without gears or moving mechanical parts. The world itself powers the system completely. This simplicity made sundials durable and widespread across many civilizations. Stone sundials could survive outdoors for long periods, while requiring very little maintenance. Public spaces often included large sundials because they provided useful shared references for daily activity. Farmers, merchants, travelers, and religious communities all benefited from more organized awareness of daylight progression. At the same time, sundials revealed important limitations that would eventually encourage future inventions. The most obvious limitation was darkness. A sundial becomes useless once the sun disappears below the horizon. Nighttime could not be measured accurately through shadow movement because shadows themselves depend entirely upon sunlight. Heavy clouds and storms also reduced visibility, making measurement less reliable during poor weather conditions. These limitations gradually inspired people to search for systems that could operate independently from direct sunlight. Yet even as new methods later emerged, the sundial remained important because it introduced the central idea that repeating natural motion could create organized measurement. The slow movement of shadows also encouraged a calmer relationship with time than many modern systems produce today. Sundials do not divide days into flashing digital numbers, changing every second. Their movement feels gentle and continuous. Time passes gradually across stone surfaces beneath sunlight, while shadows drift almost silently from one position to another. The measurement remains connected directly to the visible world. Many ancient people likely experienced time in a more environmental and observational way because of systems like these. The progression of the day could literally be watched unfolding through light, moving across the earth. Morning, midday, and evening became visible stages connected directly to the position of the sun overhead. The science behind sundials may seem simple now, yet it represented a major intellectual achievement for early civilizations. People recognized that nature followed dependable laws, and that those laws could be used practically through careful design. Observation became engineering. The environment itself provided the moving system, while people created structures capable of interpreting and organizing that movement. This growing understanding slowly changed how humanity viewed the world. Instead of experiencing natural events only as mysterious or unpredictable forces, people began recognizing stable patterns hidden within everyday experience. The sky moved consistently. Shadows behaved predictably. Motion could be measured and understood. Even now, standing beside a sundial creates a strange connection to ancient history because the device still functions according to the same principles observed thousands of years ago. Sunlight reaches Earth. The planet rotates steadily through space. Shadows shift quietly across the ground. The movement continues exactly as it did for the earliest human observers watching the sky, long before mechanical clocks or technology existed. The sundial succeeded because it transformed the enormous motion of Earth itself into something small enough to observe beside a stone, a pillar, or a simple wooden stick. Through observation, people learned that the changing position of sunlight across the world could become one of the first reliable systems for measuring the steady time. Although sundials helped people organize daylight with far greater accuracy than before, they still depended entirely upon sunlight. Once darkness covered the land or heavy clouds blocked the sky, shadows could no longer provide reliable measurement. Ancient people therefore faced an important problem. Time continued moving during the night, even when the sun disappeared. Religious ceremonies, guard duties, travel, astronomy, and many other activities still required some awareness of passing hours after sunset. People began searching for another form of steady movement that could operate independently from light and shadow. Eventually, attention turned toward one of the most common and powerful substances in the world. Water flowed continuously. Rivers moved steadily toward the sea, while rain dripped from leaves and streams carved paths through the earth over enormous lengths of time. Unlike shadows, water could still move during darkness. Ancient observers slowly realized that flowing water might provide another dependable way to measure the time. This idea led to the development of water clocks, among the earliest known alternatives to sundials in human history. These devices became known in later periods as clepsydras, a term connected to the gradual movement of water from one place to another. The basic principle remained surprisingly simple. If water flowed at a steady rate, then the movement of that water could represent the movement of time itself. Imagine sitting beside a quiet stone container filled with water late at night, while the surrounding landscape rests beneath darkness. A tiny opening near the bottom allows water to escape steadily drop by drop. Inside the container, the water level gradually lowers over time. If markings are placed carefully along the interior surface, the changing level can reveal how much time has passed since the flow began. Different civilizations developed many forms of water clocks over long stretches of history. Some designs allowed water to drip outward from containers, while others slowly filled receiving vessels over time. Certain systems became highly sophisticated with floating markers, mechanical indicators, and carefully shaped openings intended to improve flow consistency. Ancient Egypt, Greece, China, Persia, and several other civilizations all experimented with water-based timekeeping in different ways. One reason water clocks became so valuable was because they worked during conditions where sundials failed completely. Nighttime no longer prevented measurement. Indoor spaces could now track time without requiring direct sunlight. People had effectively separated timekeeping from the movement of the sun, allowing measurement to continue continuously across both day and night. There is something calm about the idea of measuring time through flowing water. Unlike the sharp ticking sounds associated with many modern clocks, water moves gently and quietly. A slow stream flowing through a narrow opening creates almost no urgency. Time passes through gradual movement rather than mechanical noise. The system feels deeply connected to natural processes already familiar throughout the environment. At the same time, water clocks introduced entirely new scientific challenges. A successful water clock depended upon steady flow. If water moved too quickly or too slowly, the measurement became inaccurate. Ancient builders therefore needed to think carefully about container shapes, opening sizes, water pressure, and environmental conditions affecting movement. For example, water flows differently depending upon temperature and pressure. A container nearly full of water creates stronger pressure near the opening than a nearly empty one. This means the flow rate can change gradually unless the system is carefully designed to reduce those differences. Ancient engineers slowly learned through experimentation that controlling movement required careful structure and observation. Water clocks also reflected increasing human desire for more organized and precise awareness of time. As societies became more complex, daily activities required greater coordination. Religious rituals, government administration, astronomy, and public events all benefited from dependable systems capable of tracking intervals more accurately than rough estimates based purely on observation. Astronomers in particular found water clocks useful because nighttime observation of stars required awareness of passing hours even in complete darkness. The sky continued moving overhead while stars shifted slowly across the night. Water clocks helped observers estimate duration more consistently during long periods of study beneath the stars. There is also something fascinating about how water clocks transformed ordinary environmental behavior into structured measurement. Water had always flowed naturally through rivers, rain, and streams. People simply learned how to harness that movement in a controlled way. Nature again provided the motion, while human design created the measurement system around it. In some ways, water clocks represented a bridge between natural observation and mechanical engineering. Sundials depended directly upon environmental patterns already visible in the sky. Water clocks introduced more active control because containers and openings shaped how movement occurred. People were beginning to design systems where motion itself could be managed intentionally for improved accuracy. These systems were not perfect. Water clocks still faced problems involving evaporation, temperature changes, and irregular flow. Yet despite their limitations, they marked enormous progress in the long history of timekeeping. For the first time, people possessed devices capable of measuring time even when sunlight disappeared completely. The quiet movement of water through these ancient systems reflected a growing understanding that time could be tracked through many forms of repeating change. People no longer depended entirely upon the sky for measurement. Instead, they learned that motion inside designed systems could also reveal the passing hours. Even modern timekeeping still carries traces of these early discoveries. Every clock, regardless of its complexity, depends upon controlled and motion at its core. The flowing water of ancient clepsydras may seem distant from electronic systems operating today, yet both rely upon the same essential principle, first recognized thousands of years ago. Consistent movement can become measurable time when observed carefully and controlled with enough precision. The invention of water clocks marked another major step in humanity's long effort to understand and organize the world around them. Flowing water became more than part of nature. Through observation, experimentation, and careful design, it became one of the earliest tools, allowing people to measure time beyond the reach of sunlight and shadow. Once people began using water to measure time, they quickly discovered that flowing liquid could be both useful and unpredictable at the same time. A water clock only worked properly if the movement remained steady. If water rushed too quickly through an opening, the measurement became inaccurate. If the flow slowed unexpectedly, the passing hours appeared longer than they truly were. Ancient builders therefore faced an entirely new challenge. It was no longer enough to simply observe movement. This growing focus on consistency marked one of the most important turning points in the history of timekeeping. People were beginning to understand that accurate clocks depend upon motion. The better the control, the more dependable the measurement became. Water clocks introduced early civilizations to this idea, long before gears, springs, pendulums, or electronics ever existed. Imagine pouring water slowly from one container into another, while trying to maintain exactly the same speed from beginning to end. At first, the flow may appear smooth and regular, yet small changes quickly emerge. The pressure inside the container shifts as the water level drops. Tiny imperfections in the opening alter the stream. Temperature changes can slightly affect movement as well. Ancient people likely noticed these differences immediately while experimenting with early water clocks. Because of this, builders began paying close attention to how containers were shaped and how water behaved under different conditions. A narrow opening near the bottom of a vessel might create slower and more controlled flow than a larger opening. Some containers were designed carefully to reduce changes in pressure as water levels shifted. Others used floating markers that rose or fell gradually with the changing water inside. These experiments represented an important form of early engineering. People were no longer relying only upon naturally occurring patterns like sunlight and shadows. They were actively building systems designed to shape movement into something more predictable. Observation slowly transformed into mechanical problem solving. The idea may sound simple now, yet controlling steady movement is actually surprisingly difficult. Even technology continues facing similar challenges. Electronic clocks must regulate oscillations carefully, while mechanical systems require constant precision to avoid drifting out of accuracy. Ancient water clocks confronted these same basic problems using flowing liquid instead of electronics or gears. Water itself behaves according to physical principles that ancient builders could observe, even if they did not fully understand the mathematics behind them. Gravity pulls water downward, while pressure influences how quickly liquid escapes through openings. The amount of water inside a container changes the force pushing outward. These natural behaviors affected every early water clock, whether the builders understood the scientific details or not. Over time, repeated experimentation improved design quality. Ancient engineers learned which shapes allowed steadier movement and which designs introduced too much variation. Some civilizations created surprisingly advanced water clocks with carefully calibrated markings and regulated flow systems intended to improve reliability across long periods. Some ancient societies used water clocks in courts, religious spaces, military settings, and astronomy. Public speakers in certain regions were even timed using measured water flow, so debates and legal arguments remained balanced. This demonstrates how timekeeping gradually became connected not only to survival, but also to organization, fairness, and social structure. Astronomers especially benefited from controlled flow systems because the night sky itself moves steadily overhead. Water clocks allowed observers to track intervals while studying stars and planetary movement after sunset. The combination of celestial observation and controlled measurement slowly improved humanity's understanding of repeating natural cycles. As water clock systems became more refined, people also recognized the importance of repetition. A successful clock needed to behave similarly each time it operated. If measurements changed dramatically from one day to the next, the system became unreliable. This pushed builders toward designs capable of producing more consistent results repeatedly over long periods. The relationship between repetition and precision would later shape every major advance in clockmaking history. Mechanical clocks divided motion into repeating steps, while pendulums relied upon repeated swings. Quartz clocks measure repeated vibrations, and atomic clocks track repeating energy changes within atoms themselves. Across thousands of years of technological development, the search for stable repetition remained central to measuring time accurately. Water clocks therefore taught humanity more than how to track hours during darkness. They revealed deeper principles about motion, control, and consistency. People learned that accurate measurement depends upon systems capable of maintaining stable behavior despite changing conditions. This understanding slowly guided future inventions toward greater precision. Even today, watching water flow can create a calming sense of time. Rivers, rainfall, fountains, and ocean waves all move with steady rhythm that feels deeply connected to natural cycles. Ancient water clocks, transformed this familiar environmental motion into organized measurement through observation and design. The invention of water clocks also expanded humanity's relationship with time itself. Measurement no longer depended entirely upon the visible sky. Time could now be tracked indoors, during storms, or through darkness, using carefully regulated systems built by human hands. This shift opened the path toward increasingly advanced forms of timekeeping that would later transform civilization completely. Flowing water became more than a natural force, moving through rivers and streams. Through observation and engineering, people turned steady flow into one of the earliest controlled systems for tracking duration with growing precision. The science of flow quietly taught ancient civilizations that reliable timekeeping depends upon consistent movement, carefully shaped into predictable patterns. For thousands of years, people relied upon sunlight, shadows, and flowing water to measure the time. These systems worked surprisingly well, yet they still depended heavily upon natural conditions. Sundials required clear daylight, while water clocks depended upon controlled flow that could still change with temperature, pressure, or design imperfections. As civilizations grew larger and more organized, people began searching for systems capable of producing more reliable and independent measurement. Eventually, this search led toward one of the most important transformations in the history of timekeeping. People began creating clocks powered not by sunlight or flowing water, but by mechanical motion. Instead of depending entirely upon natural environmental behavior, these new systems used carefully designed moving parts working together inside controlled structures. Timekeeping was slowly becoming engineering. The earliest mechanical clocks did not appear suddenly through a single invention. They emerged gradually through centuries of experimentation involving gears, weights, levers, and regulated motion. Ancient builders already understood that repeating movement could measure time. What changed now was the source of that movement. Instead of observing natural cycles directly, people began constructing machines capable of generating controlled motion internally. Imagine standing inside a quiet workshop many centuries ago, while an early clockmaker carefully assembles small metal parts upon a wooden table. Tiny gears rest beside tools worn smooth through years of use. Iron weights hang from cords, while carefully shaped wheels wait to be fitted together into larger systems. Every piece must move with controlled precision, because even small imperfections can disrupt the entire mechanism. At the center of these early systems were gears. Gears allowed motion to transfer from one part of a machine to another while changing speed and direction along the way. A large gear, turning slowly, could drive smaller gears, moving more rapidly. This made it possible to organize movement carefully inside a clock mechanism. Rotating wheels became the foundation of mechanical timekeeping. The idea may seem ordinary now, because gears appear in countless modern machines, yet for early engineers, they represented great innovation. A properly designed gear system could divide and regulate movement consistently. Instead of relying upon flowing water or changing shadows, clocks could now use interconnected mechanical parts working together continuously. Energy still needed to come from somewhere. Early mechanical clocks often relied upon suspended weights. Gravity pulled these weights downward slowly over time, creating steady force that powered the internal movement of gears. As the weight descended, cords unwound gradually while transferring energy into the clock mechanism. There is something elegant about this system because gravity itself became part of timekeeping. The constant downward pull experienced everywhere on Earth could now drive clocks forward steadily through carefully designed machinery. People had once measured time through shadows cast by sunlight. Now they were using invisible physical forces inside machines to produce organized motion. Springs later introduced another important development. Instead of depending entirely upon hanging weights, certain clocks stored energy inside tightly wound springs. As the spring slowly unwound, it released controlled force into the mechanism. This allowed clocks to become smaller and more portable because they no longer required heavy suspended weights hanging beneath large structures. Mechanical clocks therefore opened entirely new possibilities. Timekeeping no longer needed to remain tied directly to outdoor sunlight or large stationary water systems. Clocks could now exist inside towers, homes, workshops, and eventually portable devices carried by individuals. Measurement became increasingly flexible and widespread. At first, these early mechanical systems were not perfectly accurate. Friction between moving parts created inconsistencies, while manufacturing imperfections affected reliability. Tiny changes in temperature could alter material behavior slightly. Clockmakers therefore spent generations improving design quality through careful experimentation and craftsmanship. This growing focus on precision transformed clockmaking into one of the most sophisticated engineering fields of the ancient and medieval world. Skilled craftsmen devoted years learning how to shape metal parts accurately enough for reliable movement. Workshops became places of experimentation where observation and mechanical design worked closely together. In many cities, public mechanical clocks became symbols of organization and civic pride. Large clock towers helped coordinate work schedules, religious observances, markets, and daily routines. The measurement of time was becoming more standardized and visible across society. The movement inside these clocks still depended upon repeating cycles, just like every earlier timekeeping method. Shadows repeated predictable paths, while water flowed steadily through containers. Mechanical clocks continued this same tradition through rotating gears and controlled energy release. Across every stage of development, consistency remained the essential requirement. As mechanical systems improved, people gradually experienced time differently. More accurate clocks allowed schedules to become more organized and coordinated. Activities could now follow shared measured intervals rather than rough environmental estimates alone. Society itself slowly became more synchronized around standardized awareness of passing hours. The invention of mechanical clocks therefore represented more than a technological improvement. It changed humanity's relationship with time. Measurement became increasingly detached from direct observation of nature and increasingly connected to engineered systems operating continuously through human design. Even modern mechanical watches still carry traces of these early innovations. Tiny gears, springs, and controlled motion remain central to their operation despite centuries of refinement. The principles discovered long ago inside early workshops continue quietly measuring time today through carefully regulated mechanical movement. People had begun with sunlight and shadows beneath the open sky. Later, flowing water provided more controlled measurement during darkness and indoors. Now gears, weights, and springs introduced an entirely new era where machines themselves generated organized motion capable of tracking the world with growing precision. Mechanical movement had become one of humanity's most powerful tools for measuring time. As mechanical clocks became more advanced, clockmakers faced an important challenge that would shape the future of timekeeping for centuries. A machine filled with gears could only measure time properly if those gears continued moving steadily and predictably. Motion alone was not enough. The movement needed reliable energy behind it. Without a controlled source of power, the gears would slow, stop, or move unevenly, causing the entire clock to lose accuracy. This problem led early engineers toward two of the most important power systems in mechanical clock history. Weights and springs became the driving force behind many clocks because both systems could store and release energy gradually over time. Instead of relying upon sunlight or flowing water, clocks could now operate through controlled physical tension, carefully managed inside mechanical structures. The earliest large mechanical clocks often used hanging weights. Imagine a tall clock tower standing above a quiet medieval town during the early morning hours. Deep inside the tower, heavy stone or metal weights hang suspended from thick cords wrapped around rotating drums. Gravity constantly pulls these weights downward toward the earth. As the weights descend slowly, the cords unwind gradually and transfer motion into the clock's gears. This system worked because gravity itself remains remarkably dependable. A suspended weight always pulls downward with steady force. Clockmakers realized that this steady movement could provide continuous energy for driving mechanical systems over long periods. The challenge was not creating motion, but controlling it carefully enough for accurate timekeeping. Without regulation, a falling weight would simply drop rapidly toward the ground in seconds. Clockmakers therefore developed systems designed to slow and manage the release of energy. Gears, rotating wheels, and later escapement mechanisms help divide the movement into smaller controlled steps. Instead of one sudden motion, the energy could now power clocks steadily throughout the day. There is something almost poetic about how early mechanical clocks measured time through falling weight. Gravity pulled continuously and invisibly upon the world around them, while gears transformed that natural force into organized motion. The clock became a carefully balanced conversation between physical laws and human engineering. Large weight-driven clocks required regular maintenance because the weights eventually reached the bottom of their travel distance. Someone needed to raise them again manually by turning cranks or pulling cords. Entire communities sometimes depended upon caretakers responsible for winding public clocks so they could continue operating reliably day after day. As timekeeping became more widespread, people also wanted clocks that could exist beyond large towers and stationary buildings. This desire encouraged another major invention. Springs allowed clocks to become smaller, more portable, and more flexible than earlier weight-driven systems. A spring stores energy by resisting deformation. When tightly wound, the spring holds tension that gradually releases as it unwinds over time. Clockmakers realized this stored force could drive gears much like falling weights, but without requiring large hanging masses suspended beneath the clock. The result was revolutionary for portability. Imagine a carefully coiled strip of metal wound tightly inside a small brass mechanism. The metal naturally wants to unwind back into its relaxed shape, yet the clock controls that release carefully through gears and regulating systems. Instead of gravity pulling a weight downward, stored tension inside the spring now powers the movement. Springs also introduced new engineering challenges. Metal tension changes gradually as springs unwind, meaning the force delivered to the mechanism can vary over time. Clockmakers therefore needed increasingly sophisticated systems capable of smoothing out these differences and maintaining consistent movement despite changing tension levels. The materials used inside clocks mattered enormously as well. Different metals behave differently under changing temperatures and stress. Some expand more with heat, while others resist wear better during movement. Clockmakers experimented continuously with materials because even small improvements could noticeably increase accuracy and reliability. It is fascinating how much patience these systems required. A clockmaker might spend countless hours shaping gears, adjusting springs, polishing pivots, and testing movement repeatedly before achieving acceptable performance. Precision emerged slowly, through discipline and observation, rather than sudden invention. Despite these advances, the underlying concept remained surprisingly familiar. Every successful clock still depended upon motion. Sundials tracked shifting shadows, while water clocks measured flowing liquid. Mechanical systems simply replaced those earlier forms of movement with rotating gears powered through stored energy. As clocks improved, societies gradually organized themselves more closely around measured intervals. Work schedules, travel, trade, religious observances, and public events all benefited from greater consistency. Timekeeping was slowly transforming from environmental awareness into organized infrastructure shaping civilization itself. Even today, many traditional mechanical watches continue using springs as their primary energy source. Tiny wound mainsprings store tension that powers delicate gear systems through controlled release. Modern engineering refined the technology enormously, yet the essential principle remains closely connected to discoveries made centuries ago by early clockmakers experimenting with stored mechanical energy. As mechanical clocks became more common, clockmakers slowly realized that gears, weights, and springs alone could not guarantee accurate timekeeping. A clock might contain carefully shaped wheels and steady sources of power, yet without proper regulation, the entire system would still move too quickly or unevenly. Gravity pulled weights downward continuously, while tightly wound springs constantly pushed outward with stored tension. Left uncontrolled, the mechanism would simply release all of its energy at once. The challenge was not only creating movement, but controlling the speed of that movement with precision. This problem eventually led to one of the most important inventions in the history of mechanical clocks. The escapement transformed timekeeping because it allowed energy to be released gradually in controlled repeating steps rather than all at once. Through this mechanism, clocks could move steadily and predictably enough to measure time with far greater reliability than earlier systems. Imagine a large weight hanging inside an early mechanical clock tower. Gravity pulls downward continuously, attempting to spin the gears rapidly through the mechanism. Without regulation, the gears would rush forward uncontrollably. The escapement interrupts this motion repeatedly. Instead of allowing continuous free movement, the mechanism releases energy in tiny measured intervals, one step at a time. This repeated stopping and releasing creates the familiar ticking rhythm associated with mechanical clocks. Each tick represents a controlled release of motion. The escapement acts almost like a gatekeeper inside the mechanism, permitting movement to proceed only in small, organized increments rather than one uncontrolled rush. Different forms of escapements developed over long periods of experimentation. Early designs were often imperfect and produced significant errors. Yet even these primitive systems represented enormous progress compared with uncontrolled mechanical movement. Clockmakers gradually refined tooth shapes, wheel designs, and regulating components in search of smoother and more consistent operation. The importance of repetition became increasingly clear through these experiments. Accurate timekeeping depends heavily upon regularity. If one interval lasts slightly longer than the next, errors slowly accumulate throughout the day. Escapements improved reliability because they transformed continuous energy into repeated units of controlled movement. Imagine watching an escapement operate in slow motion. A gear attempts to rotate forward under pressure from a falling weight or unwinding spring. The escapement catches the gear repeatedly, stopping it briefly before allowing another tiny movement forward. Stop and release. Stop and release. Over and over again, the mechanism divides motion into organized segments. Public clock towers especially transformed urban environments. Before mechanical clocks, daily routines depended heavily upon sunlight, environmental observation, or approximate estimates of passing hours. Large clocks ringing bells according to regulated intervals introduced greater coordination within growing towns and cities. Markets opened at more predictable times, while work schedules and religious observances became increasingly organized around shared measurement. The escapement also demonstrated how small mechanical improvements can produce enormous cultural change. At first glance, the mechanism appears relatively simple compared with technology. Yet by controlling energy release carefully enough, it dramatically improved the usefulness and reliability of clocks. Entire societies gradually became more synchronized because of this ability to divide movement into steady intervals. Clockmakers spent generations refining escapement systems because tiny mechanical differences greatly affected accuracy. Friction between components, imperfect gear teeth, and uneven force could all introduce timing errors. Skilled craftsmen therefore adjusted and tested mechanisms repeatedly in search of smoother performance. This attention toward precision pushed mechanical engineering forward rapidly. The demands of accurate clockmaking encouraged improvements in metalworking, machining, lubrication, and design. Clocks became some of the most sophisticated machines of their era because timekeeping required exceptional control over movement. There is something calm about the steady rhythm created by escapements. The repeating ticks suggest order and consistency inside a constantly changing world. Unlike sudden or chaotic movement, the clock advances patiently through measured intervals one after another. Each release of energy marks another small portion of time. The escapement also reinforced one of the deepest principles underlying all timekeeping systems across history. Accurate clocks rely upon predictable repetition. Sundials measured repeating solar motion, while water clocks tracked controlled flow. Mechanical escapements now divided energy into repeating mechanical intervals. Across every stage of development, steady movement remained the foundation of measurement. As these systems improved, people gained increasing confidence in mechanical clocks as dependable tools rather than rough approximations. More reliable timing supported navigation, astronomy, trade, science, and social organization. Human civilization gradually became more structured around shared awareness of measured intervals. Even today, traditional mechanical watches still rely upon escapement mechanisms operating according to principles developed centuries ago. Tiny components release stored energy step by step through repeated controlled movement. Modern craftsmanship refined the systems enormously, yet the essential concept remains closely connected to the early inventions that first introduced ticking rhythm into the measurement of time. The escapement represented another major turning point because it solved one of the central problems of mechanical timekeeping. People learned to generate movement through weights and springs. Now they had learned how to regulate that movement carefully enough for precision to improve dramatically. As mechanical clocks improved through the invention of escapements and more refined gear systems, people gained something earlier civilizations had never fully possessed before. Time could now be divided into increasingly regular and dependable intervals. Instead of relying only upon broad environmental changes like sunrise, sunset, or seasonal movement, people could measure smaller portions of the day with growing precision. The world was slowly becoming organized around repeated segments of motion carefully counted by machines. The escapement played a central role in this transformation because it separated continuous motion into repeated steps. Each tick represented a small, measured interval rather than one uninterrupted flow of movement. People could now count repeated mechanical actions to organize the passing day more consistently than before. Imagine standing inside a quiet town square many centuries ago, while a large tower clock sounds steady, rhythmic movement high above the streets. The mechanism hidden inside the tower divides motion continuously throughout the day. Gears rotate, while the escapement releases energy in controlled intervals. Bells eventually ring, according to those measured segments, allowing entire communities to coordinate activity around shared awareness of passing hours. This growing ability to divide time accurately helped create greater consistency within life. Markets could open according to agreed schedules, while workers gathered at more organized times. Religious observances, legal proceedings, and public meetings became easier to coordinate because communities increasingly relied upon common measurement rather than rough environmental estimation alone. The idea may feel ordinary now because modern life depends heavily upon precise scheduling, yet this represented a major cultural transformation. People were beginning to organize society around standardized intervals measured by machines. The time became more structured, predictable, and shared across larger groups of people. At the center of this transformation remained the principle of repetition. Clocks function properly because motion creates consistency. A pendulum swings repeatedly. An escapement releases energy repeatedly. A quartz crystal vibrates repeatedly. Across every major form of timekeeping, repetition allows movement to become measurable. Mechanical clocks therefore taught people that dividing continuous motion into smaller regular segments could improve precision dramatically. Earlier systems like sundials and water clocks measured broader progression more than exact repeated intervals. Mechanical systems introduced sharper organization through counted cycles of movement. As clocks became more reliable, societies gradually developed stronger expectations surrounding punctuality and scheduling. Activities no longer needed to depend entirely upon natural conditions like daylight alone. Mechanical systems allowed communities to coordinate increasingly complex forms of trade, labor, travel, and communication through shared measured intervals. This growing structure also influenced scientific thinking. Astronomy, navigation, and mathematics all benefited from improved time measurement because many scientific observations depend upon accurate awareness of duration and repeating cycles. Better clocks allowed researchers to study movement and change more precisely than earlier generations could achieve. The division of time into smaller units also changed how people experienced life psychologically. Earlier environmental timekeeping often felt broader and more fluid because it followed natural transitions in light, weather, and activity. Mechanical clocks introduced sharper boundaries between intervals. Hours became more distinct. The passing day acquired stronger structure through repeated measurement. Mechanical timekeeping slowly spread into homes, workshops, ships, and public buildings as systems became more practical and reliable. Portable watches eventually allowed individuals to carry personal measurement systems directly beside them. Awareness of precise intervals became increasingly woven into ordinary life. The division of time also reflected growing confidence in humanity's ability to create standardized systems. Earlier measurement methods often varied significantly depending upon weather, geography, or environmental conditions. Mechanical clocks promised greater consistency because carefully designed machines could reproduce similar intervals repeatedly regardless of changing sunlight or flowing water. This gradual standardization would eventually become essential for modern civilization. Transportation systems, scientific research, communication networks, factories, and global coordination all depend heavily upon shared understanding of measured intervals. The foundations of this structure began developing slowly through the repeated ticking of early mechanical clocks. As mechanical clocks spread across towns, cities, workshops, and homes, clockmakers searched for ways to improve accuracy. Earlier systems using gears, weights, springs, and escapements had already transformed humanity's ability to measure time, yet even the best clocks still drifted noticeably over long periods. Small irregularities inside the mechanism slowly accumulated. Friction affected movement, while changing force from springs or weights introduced inconsistencies. The challenge remained the same as it had always been throughout the history of timekeeping. Movement needed to stay as predictable as possible. Eventually, one of the most important discoveries in clockmaking history emerged from something surprisingly simple. A swinging pendulum could move with remarkable regularity under stable conditions. This gentle back-and-forth motion became one of humanity's greatest tools for improving precision because it introduced a more dependable, repeating interval than many earlier systems could achieve. Imagine standing inside a quiet room while a heavy pendulum swings slowly beneath a clock case. The movement appears calm and hypnotic. One swing moves left, while the next returns right. Over and over again, the pendulum repeats the same graceful arc with steady rhythm. Unlike complicated gears turning at different speeds, the pendulum creates a clear and highly regular cycle of motion. What made pendulums so useful was the predictability of their movement. Under stable conditions, a pendulum of fixed length tends to swing at nearly the same rate repeatedly. This regularity allowed clockmakers to regulate mechanical systems with far greater accuracy than before. Instead of relying only upon the internal friction and balance of gears, clocks could now synchronize movement to the dependable rhythm of the swinging pendulum. The science behind this behavior depends upon gravity and motion working together. When a pendulum swings away from its resting position, gravity gradually slows the movement before pulling it back again in the opposite direction. Energy shifts continuously between motion and position as the pendulum travels through repeated arcs. The cycle repeats naturally with impressive consistency. There is something deeply calming about pendulum motion because it feels both steady and alive at the same time. The movement never appears rushed. Each swing follows naturally from the one before it, with quiet regularity. Pendulum clocks eventually filled homes and public spaces with slow, rhythmic ticking connected directly to this repeated swinging motion. Clockmakers quickly discovered that pendulum length affected timing. A longer pendulum swings more slowly, while a shorter pendulum moves more quickly. This relationship allowed builders to adjust clock behavior carefully by changing dimensions within the system. Precision therefore became linked not only to craftsmanship, but also to mathematical understanding of motion itself. The introduction of pendulums marked another major step forward because clocks could now divide time into more consistent intervals. Errors that once accumulated rapidly inside earlier mechanical systems became easier to control. Pendulum clocks dramatically improved daily accuracy, making them some of the most dependable timekeeping devices the world had ever seen. This improvement influenced many parts of society. Astronomy benefited greatly because observing planetary and stellar movement requires careful timing. Navigation also depended increasingly upon accurate clocks, because determining position across oceans involves measuring time differences precisely. Scientific experiments became more reliable when duration could be measured consistently. Pendulum clocks also strengthened the growing relationship between science and engineering. Clockmakers could no longer rely entirely upon craftsmanship alone. Understanding motion, balance, gravity, and measurement became increasingly important for improving performance. The clock evolved into both a scientific instrument and a mechanical machine. Imagine an experienced clockmaker carefully adjusting a pendulum inside a tall wooden case centuries ago. Tiny changes in length produce measurable differences in timing. The craftsman listens closely to the ticking rhythm while comparing movement against known references. Patience becomes essential because even small errors matter greatly over long periods. Temperature created new challenges as well. Metal rods expand slightly in warmth and contract during cold conditions. Because pendulum length influences timing, changing temperature could affect accuracy subtly throughout the year. Clockmakers therefore invented increasingly sophisticated compensation systems designed to reduce these effects and preserve regular movement. This growing obsession with precision reveals how much human civilization had changed since the earliest days of shadow observation beneath the open sky. Ancient people once measured time broadly through sunrise, seasons, and environmental rhythms. Now engineers worked carefully to reduce tiny fractions of error inside mechanical systems operating through controlled physical motion. Despite these advances, pendulum clocks still remained connected deeply to natural principles. Gravity continued providing the restoring force that guided each swing. Repeating movement remained central to measurement, just as it had been with sundials and water clocks. The technology evolved dramatically, yet the underlying requirement stayed remarkably familiar. Accurate timekeeping depends upon dependable repetition. There is something almost meditative about listening to a pendulum clock late at night. The movement feels calm and deliberate rather than hurried. Each swing marks another measured interval, passing quietly through the darkness. The mechanism creates the impression that time itself moves with patient consistency. As pendulum clocks improved, societies grew even more dependent upon standardized measurement. Coordinated schedules, scientific observation, navigation, commerce, and communication all benefited from more reliable clocks. Human civilization gradually synchronized itself around increasingly precise awareness of passing duration. The pendulum also demonstrated how simple natural motion could produce great technological impact when understood carefully. A swinging weight suspended from a pivot might appear ordinary at first glance, yet this humble movement transformed clockmaking for centuries. Through observation and engineering, people discovered that stable motion could dramatically improve measurement precision. Even today, pendulum clocks remain admired not only for their historical importance, but also for their elegance. The movement connects directly to the fundamental principles underlying mechanical timekeeping. Gravity, balance, and repeated motion work together in quiet harmony inside the mechanism. The invention of the pendulum clock marked another major turning point in humanity's long attempt to measure time accurately. People had learned that predictable swinging motion could regulate mechanical systems with far greater consistency than earlier methods allowed. Through careful adjustment of length, balance, and motion, pendulums transformed clocks into more precise instruments capable of tracking the world with steady rhythmic accuracy. As pendulum clocks spread across the world, people gained a much deeper understanding of something that had quietly connected every successful timekeeping system across history. Accurate clocks depend upon predictable motion. Whether the movement comes from shadows crossing the ground, water flowing through a vessel, gears turning inside a mechanism, or a pendulum swinging beneath gravity, the essential requirement always remains the same. The motion must repeat consistently enough to create dependable measurement. This realization gradually transformed timekeeping from simple observation into a sophisticated study of stability and precision. Clockmakers no longer focused only upon creating movement. They focused upon making movement remain regular despite changing conditions. The more stable the system became, the more accurate the measurement could be. Imagine listening carefully to a pendulum clock late at night inside a quiet room. Tick follows tick with gentle rhythm while the pendulum swings steadily behind glass. The movement appears almost effortless because the system has been carefully balanced to reduce irregularity. Every part works together to preserve consistency. The clock succeeds not through speed or power, but through controlled repetition. earlier forms of timekeeping already hinted at this principle. Sundials relied upon Earth's reliable rotation, while water clocks depended upon relatively steady flow. Yet pendulum clocks revealed more clearly than ever that stability itself forms the heart of accurate measurement. Small irregularities create errors. Predictable motion creates precision. Clockmakers therefore became increasingly concerned with anything capable of disrupting stability. Friction inside moving parts could slow the mechanism unevenly. Temperature changes might alter material size slightly. Dust, wear, humidity, and imperfections in craftsmanship all introduced tiny variations that accumulated gradually over time. The search for accuracy became a constant effort to reduce instability wherever possible. This pursuit encouraged great mechanical refinement. Gears were shaped more carefully, while pivots and bearings became smoother. Better materials reduced wear and improved reliability. Lubrication techniques evolved to minimize friction between moving surfaces. Clockmaking slowly transformed into one of the most demanding forms of precision engineering in the world. The pendulum itself demonstrated how stable systems produce reliable intervals. Under proper conditions, each swing takes nearly the same amount of time. This repeated consistency allowed clocks to divide the passing day into predictable segments more accurately than earlier technologies. The pendulum effectively became a physical standard for regular motion. At the same time, people realized that no system remains perfectly isolated from the environment around it. Temperature changes slightly affect metal length, while air resistance influences movement subtly over time. Even gravity varies very slightly depending upon location on Earth. These discoveries revealed that achieving perfect accuracy is extraordinarily difficult because every physical system interacts continuously with the surrounding world. Yet despite these challenges, precision improved steadily through experimentation and refinement. People learned how to compensate for certain environmental effects while designing mechanisms capable of maintaining more stable behavior under changing conditions. Every improvement reduced error a little further. The growing importance of accurate clocks influenced science profoundly. Astronomers required dependable measurement for tracking celestial movement, while navigators crossing oceans depended increasingly upon precise timekeeping for determining position. Scientific experiments also became more sophisticated because accurate duration measurement allowed researchers to study motion and change with greater confidence. Navigation especially demonstrated the practical importance of predictable motion. Determining longitude at sea depends heavily upon accurate clocks capable of maintaining stable time during long voyages. A reliable marine clock could compare local solar position with reference time from another location, helping sailors estimate their east-west position across vast oceans. Tiny errors in clock accuracy could produce enormous navigational mistakes after many days at sea. This relationship between predictable motion and exploration changed global history dramatically. Improved clocks help support trade, travel, mapping, and communication across growing international networks. Timekeeping was no longer merely about organizing daily schedules. It became essential infrastructure supporting expanding civilization. Despite this growing precision, pendulum clocks still retained something deeply physical and visible about their movement. Unlike hidden electronic systems inside modern devices, pendulums openly displayed the motion responsible for measurement. Watching the steady swing provided direct visual connection to the mechanism tracking time. There is something calm about this visibility because the process feels understandable and grounded in natural motion. The pendulum swings through predictable rhythm while gravity and balance guide each cycle gently forward. Timekeeping appears connected directly to physical movement rather than invisible electronic calculation. The search for predictable motion also revealed an important truth about engineering itself. Reliable systems often succeed not because they are extremely powerful or complicated, but because they behave consistently. Stability matters more than speed. Repetition matters more than force. Clocks taught humanity that controlled regularity can produce great precision over long periods. This lesson extended far beyond timekeeping. Scientific instruments, industrial machines, transportation systems, and communication technologies all eventually depended upon stable, repeated behavior. The principles refined through clockmaking influenced broader engineering development throughout modern history. Even today, modern clocks continue following the same underlying philosophy established centuries ago. Quartz systems rely upon predictable crystal vibration, while atomic clocks measure highly stable energy transitions inside atoms themselves. The technology evolved enormously, yet the goal remains remarkably familiar. Find motion stable enough to repeat consistently, then use that repetition to measure time. The movement may now occur invisibly inside electronic circuits, rather than through swinging pendulums, but predictable repetition still forms the foundation of accurate measurement. People continue searching for systems capable of reducing irregularity further and further in pursuit of ever greater precision. Inside workshops, observatories, ships, and homes across earlier centuries, pendulum clocks quietly demonstrated the great power of stable motion. Through careful balance, refined engineering, and patient experimentation, people learned that steady movement could transform clocks into remarkably accurate instruments, capable of organizing science, navigation, and life around dependable measurement. The history of timekeeping had gradually become the history of mastering controlled repetition. Shadows, flowing water, gears, escapements, and pendulums all revealed the same fundamental truth. Time can be measured only when movement remains steady enough to repeat with reliable consistency across the world. For much of history, clocks were large stationary machines that belonged to towers, churches, public squares, observatories, or wealthy homes. Early mechanical systems depended upon heavy weights, large gears, and carefully balanced structures that could not easily be moved from place to place. Timekeeping remained tied to fixed locations. People listened for bells echoing through towns or visited public spaces to estimate the passing hours. Yet as engineering improved, people slowly began pursuing a new idea that would transform life completely. What if time itself could travel with the individual? This question led toward one of the most important changes in the history of clocks. Mechanical systems gradually became smaller, lighter, and more compact. Clockmakers learned how to reduce the size of gears, springs, and moving components while still maintaining dependable motion. The enormous tower clock slowly evolved into portable devices that could fit inside homes, travel in carriages, and eventually rest inside pockets or against the human body itself. Imagine an experienced craftsman sitting inside a small workshop surrounded by tiny brass gears, polished springs, and delicate tools carefully arranged across a wooden table. Earlier generations of clockmakers worked with large iron components designed for public towers and heavy stationary mechanisms. Now the challenge had become more demanding. Every part needed to shrink while still moving with precision and stability. This process required great craftsmanship because smaller systems often become more difficult to control accurately. Tiny imperfections matter even more when components operate within compact spaces. A slight imbalance in a gear or inconsistency in a spring can influence the entire mechanism noticeably. Clockmakers therefore developed increasingly refined techniques for shaping metal parts with remarkable care. The spring became especially important during this transformation because portable clocks could not depend upon large hanging weights. A wound spring stores energy compactly inside the mechanism itself, allowing movement to continue without requiring heavy suspended masses. As the spring slowly unwinds, it powers the gears through controlled release of tension. This invention opened entirely new possibilities for timekeeping. Clocks no longer needed to remain fixed inside one location. A person could now carry measurement directly with them while traveling, working, or moving through life. Time became increasingly personal and constant, rather than something encountered only through public signals or environmental observation. Early portable clocks and watches were often expensive and delicate because their construction demanded highly skilled labor. Tiny gears, pivots, escapements, and springs required precise assembly by experienced craftsmen working patiently with specialized tools. These devices represented some of the most advanced mechanical engineering of their era. It is fascinating how portable timekeeping changed human experience psychologically. Earlier generations often understood time through shared environmental patterns like sunlight, seasons, bells, and community routines. Portable watches allowed individuals to carry private awareness of measured duration everywhere they traveled. Time became increasingly individualized. The appearance of portable clocks also encouraged stronger social coordination. Travelers could estimate journey duration more accurately, while merchants organized schedules with greater precision. Meetings, transportation, navigation, and trade all benefited from the growing ability to track passing hours independently from fixed public clocks. At sea, portable timekeeping became especially valuable. Navigation across long distances depends heavily upon accurate measurement because sailors must compare local observations against reference time. Improved portable clocks therefore supported exploration and global trade by helping navigators maintain better awareness of position during extended voyages. The miniaturization of clocks reflected broader advances in engineering and materials as well. Better metalworking techniques allowed smaller and more reliable components. Improved springs maintained steadier tension, while refined escapements reduced timing errors. Glass coverings protected delicate mechanisms from dust and moisture. Every improvement helped make portable systems more practical and dependable. Despite becoming smaller, these devices still relied upon the same fundamental principles connecting all earlier forms of timekeeping. Movement remained central. Springs stored energy, while gears transferred motion, and escapements divided that movement into repeated intervals. Portable watches may have appeared radically different from sundials or water clocks, yet each system depended upon stable motion to create measurement. There is something almost intimate about carrying a watch close to the body. The mechanism moves continuously through tiny controlled cycles while resting quietly inside a pocket or against the wrist. Hidden gears and springs continue measuring the world silently, even while life unfolds around them. As watches became more common, societies grew increasingly structured around personal awareness of schedules and intervals. Timekeeping shifted from a largely communal experience towards something individuals managed directly themselves. This gradual change influenced work patterns, travel expectations, communication, and social organization across many cultures. The craftsmanship behind these devices also inspired admiration because portable clocks represented great precision compressed into remarkably small spaces. Tiny mechanical systems performed tasks once requiring massive tower mechanisms weighing enormous amounts. Human engineering had achieved a level of refinement, allowing sophisticated movement to exist within objects small enough to carry by hand. Clockmakers devoted years mastering these techniques because reliability remained difficult at smaller scales. Friction, wear, dust, temperature changes, and spring tension all influenced accuracy. Builders therefore continued refining balance, lubrication, and component design through constant experimentation. Portable timekeeping also strengthened the growing cultural importance of punctuality. Shared schedules became easier to maintain when individuals possessed personal clocks or watches. Society gradually synchronized itself more tightly around measured intervals because accurate portable devices made coordinated timing increasingly practical. As technology improved, portable clocks became more accessible to wider populations rather than remaining rare luxury objects alone. Timekeeping spread gradually through society, influencing work, transportation, communication, and personal routine more deeply with each generation. Even modern wristwatches continue reflecting principles developed during this era of miniaturization. Tiny mechanical systems still rely upon stored energy, regulated movement, and repeated intervals. Electronic watches later changed the technology dramatically, yet the goal remained similar. Accurate time should remain available anywhere people travel. Inside each compact mechanism, tiny systems continued repeating controlled movement continuously. The same fundamental principles first observed through shadows and flowing water now existed inside portable devices, small enough to accompany people wherever they went, allowing time itself to travel beside them through the world. As portable clocks and watches became more common, the demand for better accuracy and reliability increased rapidly. Earlier generations of timekeeping devices had already transformed human society, yet many clocks still drifted noticeably over long periods or behaved differently under changing environmental conditions. Springs weakened gradually, gears wore down through repeated motion, and tiny imperfections inside the mechanism could introduce accumulating errors. Clockmakers therefore entered a long period of refinement, where improving engineering became just as important as inventing entirely new systems. This stage of clockmaking history focused heavily on materials, craftsmanship, and mechanical precision. People learned to create motion through gears, escapements, springs, and pendulums. The next challenge was improving how smoothly and consistently those systems operated over time. Better engineering meant better measurement. Imagine a clockmaker carefully examining a tiny brass gear beneath warm workshop light centuries ago. Earlier mechanical systems often used rougher materials and less precise shaping methods. Now craftsmen worked with increasing patience and sophistication, polishing surfaces, refining tooth shapes, and adjusting delicate moving parts, so friction and instability could be reduced as much as possible. The materials used inside clocks mattered enormously because every component experiences repeated motion continuously. Gears rotate thousands upon thousands of times, while springs wind and unwind under constant tension. Metal pivots slide against bearings, while escapements release movement through repeated contact. Poor quality materials wear down quickly, introducing irregularities that reduce accuracy over time. Clockmakers therefore experimented constantly with different metals and manufacturing methods. Certain materials resisted corrosion more effectively, while others maintained smoother surfaces after long use. Harder metals could survive movement longer without deforming, while carefully polished surfaces reduced friction between components. This growing understanding of material behavior helped improve reliability dramatically. A clock built with refined engineering could maintain steadier movement across much longer periods than earlier systems. Precision no longer depended only upon clever design. It also depended upon how carefully every individual part was constructed and maintained. Lubrication became especially important because moving metal parts naturally create friction. Without lubrication, surfaces wear against one another more aggressively, while movement becomes less smooth and predictable. Clockmakers developed specialized oils and techniques intended to preserve steady operation over long periods. Temperature also continued presenting challenges. Metal expands slightly in warmth and contracts during colder conditions. These changes may seem extremely small, yet precise clocks are sensitive to even tiny variations. Springs can behave differently, while pendulum lengths shift subtly with temperature. Engineers therefore searched for ways to reduce these effects through improved materials and compensating mechanisms. This pursuit of precision reflected a larger transformation happening throughout human civilization. Societies increasingly depended upon accurate schedules, navigation, scientific observation, and coordinated activity. Better clocks supported trade, transportation, communication, and exploration. Reliable timekeeping was becoming essential infrastructure rather than a simple curiosity or luxury. As engineering improved, watches and clocks also became more accessible to broader populations. Earlier portable systems often remained rare and expensive because skilled craftsmanship required enormous labor. Gradual improvements in manufacturing allowed larger numbers of people to own personal timekeeping devices. Time measurement spread deeper into ordinary life. Public awareness of schedules and punctuality grew stronger alongside this expansion. Work routines became increasingly structured around measured intervals, while transportation systems relied upon coordinated timing. Entire cities gradually synchronized themselves around increasingly accurate clocks operating in homes, factories, stations, and public buildings. Yet despite this technological evolution, the underlying philosophy stayed familiar. Accurate clocks still depended upon consistent, repeated motion. Every improvement in engineering ultimately served the same goal, pursued since the earliest sundials and water clocks. Movement must remain stable enough to create dependable measurement. The refinement of clocks also encouraged broader scientific and industrial progress. Precision engineering techniques developed for watchmaking later influenced other industries requiring careful manufacturing. The ability to shape tiny components accurately became increasingly valuable as technology advanced across many fields. Clockmakers gradually became masters of controlled motion. They understood how energy moved through systems, how friction altered performance, and how balance affected stability. Workshops evolved into centers of sophisticated mechanical knowledge, where generations of craftsmen refined techniques through patient experimentation. There is something almost artistic about the balance between beauty and function inside many historical watches. Decorative engraving and polished surfaces often surrounded highly sophisticated mechanical systems hidden within. The devices represented both engineering achievement and craftsmanship at the same time. As clocks became more dependable, society itself grew increasingly structured around precise awareness of passing duration. Businesses opened according to fixed schedules, while trains later depended upon synchronized timing systems across long distances. Accurate clocks helped support industrial organization and scientific coordination on scales earlier civilizations could never have imagined. The spread of reliable watches also changed individual behavior. People began carrying personal responsibility for punctuality because accurate portable measurement was now constantly available. Time became more visible and measurable throughout ordinary daily experience. Even today, traditional mechanical watches continue reflecting many of the engineering principles refined during this period. Tiny gears, springs, escapements, and carefully selected materials still work together through controlled movement. Modern manufacturing improved precision enormously, yet the core mechanical philosophy remains deeply connected to discoveries made centuries ago. Inside workshops filled with tiny tools and delicate mechanisms, people steadily improved their ability to create reliable motion. Clocks became more durable, more accurate, and more accessible because engineers and craftsmen devoted great patience toward understanding how materials and movement behaved together inside controlled systems. For centuries, mechanical clocks dominated the measurement of time through gears, springs, pendulums, and controlled motion. Skilled craftsmen refined these systems continuously, improving precision through better materials and increasingly sophisticated engineering. Yet despite all these advancements, mechanical clocks still faced unavoidable physical limitations. Friction slowly wore down moving parts, while temperature changes influenced springs and pendulums. Lubrication dried over time, and tiny imperfections gradually affected accuracy. People therefore searched for systems capable of measuring time with even greater stability and consistency. Eventually, a major transformation began unfolding during the modern age. Instead of relying entirely upon mechanical movement, clocks started using electrical and electronic systems to regulate measurement. This shift changed timekeeping profoundly because electronic devices could operate with far fewer moving parts than traditional mechanical clocks. The measurement of time was beginning to move from visible gears and pendulums into invisible electrical behavior happening inside carefully designed circuits. Imagine standing inside an early electronics laboratory during the development of these systems. Instead of rows of polished gears and swinging pendulums, engineers now worked with wires, electrical currents, coils, and delicate components mounted inside experimental devices. The atmosphere felt very different from earlier clock-making workshops, yet the central challenge remained surprisingly familiar. Movement still needed to repeat consistently enough to create reliable measurement. Electronic clocks rely heavily upon oscillation. An oscillation is a repeated back-and-forth cycle occurring with regular timing. Earlier pendulums created visible oscillation through swinging motion. Electronic systems instead produce repeating electrical patterns capable of operating consistently under controlled conditions. This represented another major turning point in the history of timekeeping, because measurement was becoming increasingly abstract. Sundials displayed moving shadows directly beneath sunlight, while pendulum clocks revealed visible swinging motion. Electronic systems often performed their repeating cycles invisibly inside circuits, where electrical signals changed state rapidly and continuously beyond normal human perception. One reason electronic clocks became so important was because they reduced many of the mechanical problems affecting older systems. Without large moving gears and heavy pendulums, there was far less friction and physical wear. Electronic components could maintain more stable operation over long periods, while requiring less maintenance than many mechanical clocks. Electricity also introduced new flexibility into timekeeping design. Clocks no longer depended entirely upon wound springs or hanging weights storing mechanical energy. Instead, electrical power could drive oscillating systems continuously through batteries or larger power networks. Timekeeping devices became more compact, reliable, and practical for widespread everyday use. As electronic systems improved, clocks became more accessible and widespread than ever before. Affordable devices appeared in homes, schools, workplaces, vehicles, factories, and public spaces across the world. Timekeeping spread into nearly every part of modern life because electronic manufacturing allowed clocks to be produced efficiently at enormous scale. This expansion strengthened society's dependence upon precise coordination. Transportation systems, communication networks, industrial processes, scientific research, and global business operations all increasingly relied upon accurate, synchronized timing. Modern civilization was becoming deeply connected through shared electronic measurement of passing duration. Electronic clocks also changed the soundscape of timekeeping. Many traditional mechanical clocks filled rooms with ticking rhythm created through repeated physical movement. Electronic systems often operated almost silently. Time continued passing with great precision, yet the mechanism behind the measurement became nearly invisible and inaudible. As engineers refined these systems further, attention shifted increasingly toward improving oscillation stability. Tiny irregularities in electrical behavior could still affect accuracy over long periods. Scientists therefore searched for materials and methods capable of producing highly dependable repeated cycles with minimal variation. This search eventually led toward one of the most important modern developments in timekeeping. Certain crystals, especially quartz, vibrate at remarkably stable rates when electricity passes through them. These vibrations offered great consistency compared with many earlier mechanical systems. Quartz technology would soon transform clocks and watches around the world. Even before quartz became widespread, electronic clocks had already demonstrated the enormous potential of electrical timing systems. They proved that accurate measurement no longer required large visible mechanical motion. Invisible oscillations inside electronic circuits could regulate time with impressive reliability and efficiency. The spread of electronic clocks also influenced human experience psychologically. Accurate measurement became constant and nearly effortless. Clocks appeared everywhere through radios, appliances, vehicles, telephones, and public infrastructure. Awareness of precise time surrounded modern life continuously in ways earlier civilizations could never have imagined. Yet beneath all this technological advancement, the core concept remained remarkably stable across thousands of years of human history. Time could only be measured by observing consistent repeating change. Sundials tracked shadows while water clocks measured flow. Mechanical systems regulated gears and pendulums. Electronic clocks relied upon controlled oscillation inside circuits. People had simply become increasingly skilled at finding forms of movement stable enough to improve precision further and further. The methods evolved dramatically, but the underlying philosophy stayed connected across every era of timekeeping development. Inside silent electronic systems operating invisibly through repeated electrical cycles, the long history of time measurement entered a new age. Gears and pendulums no longer stood alone at the center of precision. Electrical oscillation now carried the task forward through controlled circuits capable of measuring the world with great consistency. The invention of electronic clocks marked another major transformation in humanity's relationship with time. Through electricity, oscillation, and increasingly advanced engineering, people learned how to create reliable measurement using invisible repeated patterns operating silently inside modern technological systems. As electronic clocks became more advanced, engineers searched for ways to create even more predictable oscillation. Earlier electrical systems already reduced many of the problems affecting mechanical clocks, yet tiny irregularities could still influence long-term accuracy. People had spent thousands of years improving timekeeping by finding forms of motion that repeated more consistently than the systems before them. Shadows led to flowing water. Water led to gears and pendulums. Electronic oscillation improved precision further still. Now another remarkable discovery would transform timekeeping once again through something unexpectedly simple. Certain crystals vibrate with great stability when electricity passes through them. This discovery became the foundation of quartz timekeeping, one of the most important developments in modern clock history. Quartz crystals possess a property called piezoelectric behavior. When electrical energy is applied, the crystal vibrates at highly predictable frequencies. These vibrations repeat consistently, making quartz an ideal reference for accurate measurement. Imagine holding a small transparent quartz crystal beneath light. At first glance, it appears completely still and ordinary. Yet inside an electronic clock or watch, this crystal becomes the heart of an incredibly precise timing system. Electricity passes through the crystal and causes it to vibrate back and forth at steady intervals far too fast for human senses to observe directly. The importance of this discovery cannot be overstated. Earlier mechanical clocks depended upon visible physical movement like swinging pendulums or rotating gears. Quartz systems instead relied upon microscopic crystal vibration occurring thousands of times each second with great regularity. The scale of measurement had become dramatically more precise. It is fascinating how nature itself once again provided the solution. People engineered increasingly advanced systems across centuries of clockmaking. Yet one of the greatest improvements emerged from the natural behavior of crystalline material already existing within the Earth. Quartz became another example of humanity learning to harness steady patterns found within the physical world. The vibrations produced by quartz crystals remain highly dependable under controlled conditions. Electronic circuits count these repeated oscillations carefully and convert them into measurable intervals representing seconds, minutes, and hours. Instead of listening to a pendulum swing or watching gears rotate, modern quartz clocks measure invisible crystal vibration with astonishing consistency. Quartz technology transformed watches and clocks because it offered excellent accuracy while remaining compact, affordable, and reliable. Mechanical watches require delicate systems of springs, escapements, lubrication, and carefully balanced moving parts. Quartz watches often contain far fewer mechanical components while achieving significantly greater precision in ordinary daily use. This shift changed the timekeeping industry dramatically. Quartz watches became widely available across the world because electronic manufacturing allowed efficient production at large scale. Accurate personal timekeeping was no longer limited mainly to expensive mechanical craftsmanship. Millions of people could now carry highly reliable watches powered through tiny vibrating crystals hidden inside compact electronic systems. At the same time, the core principle remained deeply familiar. Every successful clock across history depends upon stable repetition. Sundials measured repeating solar movement, while water clocks tracked controlled flow. Pendulums introduced steady swinging cycles. Quartz crystals now provided highly stable vibration at microscopic scale. Across thousands of years of technological evolution, people searched for more dependable forms of motion. Quartz clocks also improved synchronization across modern society. Transportation systems, communication networks, broadcasting, computing, and scientific instruments all benefited from highly reliable electronic timing. As clocks became more accurate and affordable, shared coordination across large populations became increasingly precise. Imagine modern life without synchronized electronic timekeeping. Air travel, financial systems, digital communication, navigation networks, and countless daily technologies depend heavily upon precise timing, operating continuously in the background. Quartz systems helped create the stable measurement infrastructure supporting much of contemporary civilization. There is also something almost paradoxical about quartz timekeeping. A natural crystal formed slowly within the Earth becomes part of highly advanced electronic technology, capable of measuring time with remarkable precision. Ancient environmental observation and modern engineering quietly connect through the behavior of physical materials shaped by natural processes. As quartz devices spread around the world, society became even more tightly synchronized around precise measurement. Digital displays appeared in homes, workplaces, vehicles, appliances, and public infrastructure. Awareness of exact time became constant and nearly universal throughout modern life. Despite this increasing sophistication, the philosophical foundation of timekeeping remained surprisingly unchanged. People still could not touch time directly. They continued measuring it indirectly through repeating change occurring within stable systems. quartz simply provided one of the most reliable repeating systems ever discovered for widespread practical use. Even now, countless clocks and watches across the world continue operating through quartz vibration every second of every day. Hidden crystals oscillate continuously inside devices resting on walls, desks, wrists, dashboards, and electronic networks. Most people rarely think about the tiny motion quietly regulating their daily schedules and routines. The invention of quartz timekeeping marked another great stage in humanity's long effort to measure the world with increasing precision. Through crystal vibration, electronic counting, and highly stable oscillation, people transformed invisible microscopic movement into one of the most accurate and widespread forms of practical time measurement ever created. Inside these quiet electronic systems, natural crystals vibrate steadily through repeated cycles far beyond ordinary human perception. Those tiny invisible oscillations continue the same ancient tradition, first begun when early humans watched shadows move slowly across the earth beneath the open sky, and realized that motion could reveal the time. By the modern age, people had reached a level of timekeeping precision that earlier civilizations could scarcely have imagined. Ancient people once estimated the passing day through shifting shadows and changing sunlight, while early mechanical clockmakers struggled to control gears and pendulums with acceptable consistency. Now modern systems could measure time with astonishing accuracy through electronic oscillation, crystal vibration, and highly refined scientific engineering. Precision had become woven quietly into nearly every part of life. Most people rarely stop to think about how completely modern civilization depends upon accurate timing. Clocks now operate continuously in the background of transportation systems, communication networks, financial transactions, scientific research, navigation technology, computers, broadcasting, and electrical infrastructure. Entire societies function through synchronized measurement, operating almost invisibly beneath ordinary daily experience. Imagine waking in the morning while dozens of hidden clocks already surround the room. A phone updates automatically through distant timing networks. Appliances contain internal electronic clocks regulating functions quietly in the background. Vehicles rely upon synchronized timing systems, while communication devices exchange information through precisely measured electronic intervals, occurring far too quickly for human senses to perceive directly. Timekeeping no longer exists only inside visible clocks resting on walls or wrists. It has become deeply embedded inside technology itself. One reason modern precision became so important is because many advanced systems require extremely accurate coordination to function properly. Digital communication depends upon synchronized timing, while computer processors perform operations according to carefully regulated electrical cycles. Navigation systems compare timing signals, traveling enormous distances with great accuracy. Tiny measurement errors can create significant problems across complex technological networks. The scale of modern precision can feel almost difficult to imagine. Earlier mechanical clocks measured time through movement occurring over seconds and minutes. Modern electronic systems often operate through oscillations and signals repeating millions or even billions of times within very small fractions of a second. People learned how to measure intervals far smaller than anything ancient civilizations could directly observe. Despite these incredible advances, the foundation of timekeeping still remains connected to motion. Quartz clocks rely upon stable crystal vibration, while advanced scientific systems measure highly regular physical processes occurring within atoms themselves. The methods became more sophisticated, yet the underlying principle remains remarkably familiar across thousands of years of history. Consistent, repeated behavior allows time to be measured. Scientific research especially depends heavily upon accurate measurement. Astronomy, physics, engineering, medicine, telecommunications, and countless other fields require precise timing to study motion, energy, distance, and change correctly. The ability to measure tiny intervals accurately opened entirely new possibilities for scientific understanding and technological development. Transportation networks also rely upon synchronized timing constantly. Air travel, rail systems, shipping routes, and communication infrastructure all require coordination across enormous distances. Modern civilization functions partly because millions of independent systems remain connected through shared awareness of precise measured duration. Yet even with this transformation, people still remain biologically connected to natural rhythms. The body responds to changing daylight, sleep cycles, hunger patterns, and environmental cues much as it did thousands of years ago. Modern precision overlays itself upon ancient biological experience rather than replacing it completely. As clocks became more accurate, society also developed stronger expectations surrounding punctuality and coordination. Meetings begin according to exact schedules, while transportation systems follow carefully measured timetables. Work routines, communication, entertainment, and commerce increasingly depend upon precise synchronization between large groups of people. The search for accuracy continues even now. Scientists and engineers constantly develop improved timing systems capable of reducing error further still. Highly advanced atomic clocks can measure time with astonishing precision by tracking extremely stable physical behavior inside atoms. These systems help regulate communication networks, navigation satellites, scientific experiments, and international timing standards. Atomic clocks represent another great stage in humanity's long effort to find increasingly stable forms of motion. Ancient people once watched shadows shift across stone surfaces beneath sunlight. Modern scientists now measure tiny energy transitions occurring within atoms themselves. The scale changed dramatically, yet the deeper idea remained surprisingly constant. Time measurement depends upon dependable repetition. There is something humbling about this continuity across history. People spent thousands of years refining the same basic pursuit through increasingly advanced technology. Every generation inherited earlier discoveries and improved them further through observation, experimentation, and engineering. Even the most advanced modern systems still rely completely upon physical behavior occurring within the world. Quartz crystals vibrate according to material properties, while atomic clocks measure stable energy transitions governed by physical laws. Technology did not escape nature. It learned how to measure natural regularity with greater precision. In the modern world, timekeeping exists almost everywhere, whether people notice it or not. Clocks no longer belong only to towers, observatories, workshops, or watches carried in pockets. Measurement now operates quietly inside communication systems, transportation networks, computers, factories, satellites, scientific experiments, and international timing standards. The search for accuracy continues even now. Scientists and engineers constantly develop improved timing systems capable of reducing error further still. Highly advanced atomic clocks can measure time with astonishing precision. Yet even with this transformation, people still remain biologically connected to natural rhythms. The body responds to changing daylight, sleep cycles, hunger patterns, and environmental cues much as it did thousands of years ago. Modern scientific scientific instruments, and countless ordinary devices used every day. Human civilization has become deeply synchronized through shared awareness of precise time moving continuously in the background of life. Imagine standing inside a busy airport while hundreds of people move through terminals beneath glowing departure screens. Pilots, air traffic controllers, navigation satellites, fuel systems, weather monitoring equipment, and communication networks all depend upon precise synchronization. Tiny timing errors inside these systems could create confusion or danger very quickly. Accurate clocks therefore operate constantly behind the scenes, keeping enormous networks organized safely and efficiently. Transportation offers one of the clearest examples of how deeply civilization depends upon synchronized time. Earlier generations once traveled according to environmental conditions and rough estimates of duration. Modern rail systems, shipping routes, traffic coordination, and air travel all require carefully regulated schedules operating across large distances. Shared measurement allows thousands of moving systems to coordinate reliably every day. Communication networks depend upon precision just as strongly. Phones, computers, internet systems, broadcasting infrastructure, and satellites exchange information through electronic signals moving with great speed. These systems must remain synchronized carefully so data arrives correctly and communication remains stable. Invisible timing processes operate continuously beneath nearly every modern interaction. Scientific research also depends heavily upon accurate timekeeping. Laboratories measure tiny intervals during experiments, while telescopes track celestial movement with great precision. Physics, astronomy, medicine, engineering, and environmental science all rely upon dependable timing systems capable of supporting observation and analysis. Factories and industrial systems similarly depend upon synchronized operation. Machines coordinate movement according to carefully measured intervals, while automated systems regulate manufacturing processes continuously. Modern production would become chaotic very quickly without stable timing infrastructure organizing countless connected activities. Navigation systems demonstrate this continuity especially clearly. Modern satellite navigation depends heavily upon precise timing because signals travel enormous distances at tremendous speed. Tiny timing differences help determine location accurately across the surface of Earth. Earlier navigators once relied upon stars, pendulum clocks, and observation while crossing oceans. Modern systems now use synchronized electronic timing on planetary scale. The modern electrical grid also depends upon coordinated timing. Power generation and distribution require stable synchronization across large networks supporting cities and industries continuously. Accurate timing helps maintain balance and reliability throughout these interconnected systems, operating every moment of every day. Even entertainment and media rely upon timing infrastructure quietly in the background. Television broadcasting, streaming systems, recorded audio, and digital communication all depend upon synchronized electronic processes occurring far beyond ordinary human perception. Modern culture itself moves partly according to carefully regulated timing systems. The relationship between global coordination and personal experience creates an interesting balance within modern life. A person may carry a highly precise electronic device synchronized through worldwide timing networks, while still experiencing time emotionally through memory, routine, anticipation, and environmental change, much like earlier generations did. The history of timekeeping reveals one of the longest and most fascinating journeys in human thought. Over thousands of years, people slowly transformed simple environmental observation into extraordinarily advanced systems capable of measuring time with astonishing precision. What began with early humans watching sunlight move across the Earth eventually led toward electronic networks, crystal oscillation, and atomic measurement operating across the modern world. Despite all this technological change, the deeper foundation of timekeeping remained consistent from beginning to end. People repeatedly learned how to observe stable patterns and transform those patterns into organized measurement. In the earlier stages, time was experienced directly through nature itself. People watched sunrise and sunset while noticing changing shadows, seasonal shifts, animal behavior, and the movement of stars overhead. The world acted as the first clock because environmental change provided reliable structure for daily survival. Observation became one of humanity's greatest tools long before formal science or engineering existed. Imagine an early human community resting beside a fire during evening darkness many thousands of years ago. There are no clocks, no watches, and no written schedules. The time is understood through fading light, cooling air, and the appearance of familiar stars in the night sky. The world itself provides the rhythm shaping life. Over countless generations, these observations became more organized. People noticed that shadows moved predictably throughout the day, and that seasons followed repeating cycles across the year. The environment no longer appeared completely mysterious or random. Patterns emerged through patient attention. People slowly realized that motion could help predict future events and organize activity more effectively. This realization marked the beginning of a long transition from observation toward engineering. Sundials transformed sunlight and shadows into structured measurement, while water clocks used controlled flow to track duration during darkness and indoors. Mechanical clocks later introduced gears, springs, escapements, and pendulums designed specifically to regulate movement with increasing precision. At every stage of development, engineering built upon earlier observation rather than replacing it completely. Sundials depended upon Earth's rotation beneath the sun, while pendulums relied upon gravity and repeated motion. Quartz systems used stable crystal vibration, while atomic clocks measured regular physical behavior occurring within atoms themselves. Nature always remained present beneath the technology. The history of clocks therefore reflects humanity's growing ability to recognize and control regularity. Earlier generations mainly observed natural cycles already unfolding around them. Later civilizations learned how to build systems capable of reproducing stable motion artificially through engineering and scientific understanding. This progression required enormous patience across centuries of experimentation. People gradually improved measurement through countless small discoveries involving materials, motion, friction, balance, electricity, and physical behavior. Precision did not emerge suddenly. It accumulated slowly through observation refined into engineering over many generations. Imagine a line stretching across history, from the first person who noticed shadows changing beside a stone, to modern scientists operating atomic clocks inside advanced laboratories. The technologies differ enormously, Yet both individuals participate in the same larger effort. They are trying to understand and measure repeating change within the world around them. The transition from observation toward engineering also changed society itself. More accurate clocks allowed better navigation, while synchronized timing supported communication, transportation, science, and industry. Entire civilizations gradually became organized around increasingly precise awareness of passing duration. There is an interesting balance between simplicity and complexity throughout this history. The earliest forms of timekeeping often relied upon direct observation of obvious environmental patterns. Modern systems use invisible electronic oscillations and microscopic physical behavior operating far beyond ordinary perception. Yet the central idea remains surprisingly simple. Motion creates measurable intervals. People did not invent time itself. They invented methods for observing and organizing change. Every clock, regardless of sophistication, functions by tracking some form of repeated behavior, stable enough to serve as a reference point. The systems evolved dramatically, but the underlying challenge stayed familiar across thousands of years. Engineering gradually allowed humans to separate timekeeping from immediate environmental conditions. Sundials required sunlight, while water clocks operated during darkness. Mechanical systems later functioned inside buildings, and portable watches carried measurement directly with the individual. Electronic and atomic systems eventually synchronized entire global networks continuously and invisibly. This increasing independence from local environmental observation helped support larger and more connected civilizations. Coordinated transportation, scientific research, communication infrastructure, and worldwide commerce all depend heavily upon stable shared timing systems operating across vast distances. This relationship between observation and engineering continues even now. Scientists still study natural physical behavior, searching for systems stable enough to improve measurement further. Every advance in precision depends upon understanding how the world behaves at increasingly detailed levels. There is something almost poetic about how the entire history of clocks connects ancient sunlight to modern electronics through one continuous search for dependable repetition. Shadows moving across stone surfaces eventually led toward vibrating crystals and synchronized global networks. Yet every stage remained tied together by the same essential principle discovered long ago through patient observation beneath the open sky. The journey from observation to engineering reveals how deeply human civilization depends upon understanding regularity within the physical world. Through careful attention, experimentation, and refinement across thousands of years, people learned how to harness repeating patterns with great precision. From sunlight and shadows to pendulums, springs, crystal vibration, and atomic behavior, humanity continued building increasingly advanced ways to measure passing duration. The technology changed dramatically across history, yet the deeper goal remained constant. People sought reliable methods for understanding and organizing the steady movement of time within an ever-changing world. After thousands of years of invention, experimentation, and observation, the history of timekeeping ultimately leads toward a surprisingly simple realization. Every clock humanity has ever created exists for the same basic reason. People wanted a reliable way to understand change. From ancient shadows moving across the ground to modern atomic systems measuring microscopic physical behavior, Clocks became tools for organizing the world into patterns that could be observed, predicted, and shared. Time itself remains strangely difficult to describe directly. It cannot be touched or held in the way physical objects can. People experience time indirectly through movement, memory, aging, growth, decay, sunrise, seasons, and countless other forms of change unfolding continuously around them. Clocks do not create time. They measure motion carefully enough to help people track the world more consistently. Imagine standing outside during early evening while sunlight fades slowly across the landscape. Shadows lengthen beneath trees, while the air cools gently with approaching night. Thousands of years ago, ancient people watched these same changes unfold around them and recognized that the world moved according to repeating patterns. Long before modern science or engineering existed, people already understood something deeply important. Change itself could reveal the time. That realization quietly shaped the entire history of civilization. Observation led toward measurement, while measurement encouraged organization, navigation, science, communication, and engineering. People learned how to transform natural motion into systems capable of dividing days, coordinating societies, and eventually synchronizing technological networks spread across the planet. Yet despite all this progress, there remains something deeply familiar connecting modern life to those earliest observations beneath the open sky. People still wake with morning light and grow tired during darkness. Seasons continue changing gradually across the year, while memories organize themselves around the passage of days and years. Beneath modern precision, human experience remains connected to the rhythms of the world, much as it always has been. The history of clocks also reveals how patient human progress can be. No single invention suddenly solved timekeeping completely. Improvement emerged gradually through thousands of years of observation, experimentation, failure, refinement, and engineering. Sundials introduced organized shadows, while water clocks measured controlled flow. Mechanical systems brought gears, springs, and pendulums before electronic oscillation and crystal vibration improved precision further still. Every generation built upon discoveries made by earlier people. There is something remarkable about how many different forms of motion humans learned to use for measurement. Sunlight moved across the earth while water flowed through narrow openings. Pendulums swung beneath gravity, and gears rotated through controlled mechanical force. Quartz crystals vibrated invisibly inside electronic circuits, while atomic clocks measured stable energy transitions occurring within matter itself. Across all these systems, the same principle quietly repeated again and again. Stable motion creates measurable intervals. The story of timekeeping is therefore also the story of humanity, learning how to recognize order hidden within the physical world. Ancient people once observed natural cycles without fully understanding the scientific laws behind them. Over centuries, observation gradually evolved into mathematics, astronomy, engineering, physics, and electronics. People became increasingly skilled at identifying patterns stable enough to support accurate measurement. There is an interesting balance within modern life, because people now experience time through both natural and technological systems simultaneously. A person may carry a highly precise electronic device synchronized through worldwide timing networks while still watching sunsets, noticing changing weather, and feeling seasons shift gradually across the year. Ancient environmental awareness and modern engineering continue existing side by side. Even the most advanced modern clocks remain connected to physical reality rather than existing separately from nature. Quartz systems rely upon crystal vibration, while atomic clocks measure stable physical behavior inside matter itself. Technology did not escape the world. It learned how to observe natural regularity with greater precision. There is something calm about recognizing how consistent many natural patterns truly are. The Earth still rotates steadily beneath the Sun, while gravity continues guiding pendulum motion, and physical laws govern crystal vibration just as reliably today as in the distant past. People built increasingly advanced systems by learning how to work with that consistency rather than against it. Modern precision may seem extremely distant from the earliest days of environmental observation, yet the connection remains surprisingly direct. A digital clock glowing quietly beside a bed still depends upon repeated physical behavior occurring somewhere inside the system. Beneath all technology, timekeeping remains rooted in stable cycles and motion. The history of timekeeping stretches from ancient sunlight falling across stone surfaces to synchronized electronic systems operating across the modern planet. People spent thousands of years refining the ability to measure duration more accurately, more reliably, and across greater distances than ever before imagined. Yet in the end, every clock still performs the same essential task, first recognized by early humans watching the sky long ago. It observes repeating change and uses that consistency to measure the steady movement of time through the world around us. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about the invention of clocks and the long human journey to measure time.